Hi there, and welcome to the Board Game Sherpa. We have very special episodes of today. We're interviewing Jack Berkenstock Jr. of the Bodhana Group, and they use board games as a therapeutic device. Welcome aboard, Jack.
Thanks for having me. It's definitely great to be here, James. I love the Sherpa title in the title.
We're trying to bring new players into the hobby. That's the goal of the Board Game Sherpa.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's what keeps the hobby alive. It's what helps it thrive, and that's the next generation always gives us the next new title or the next new mechanic, right? So we need that life's blood into the hobby.
Exactly. So let's get started with a bunch of questions. I got quite a few. So let's get started with the most basic question. What is the Bodhana Group?
Oh no, I didn't think you were going to ask that. No, I'm just kidding. So the Bodhana Group is a 501c3. We're a nonprofit organization, and we're based in York, Pennsylvania, but we serve multiple different counties. And our whole mission is to try to seek out and utilize innovative and alternative ways to do treatment, education, and what used to call skill building, but now it's capacity building exercises. So we decided a while ago that tabletop games, which we had learned kind of helped us out in our own lives, whether it was with developing confidence, creativity, helping us get, more social connection with people. We decided to focus on the tabletop hobby, both board and RPG, as a better way to reach people, not just kids or teens, but also adults also. So now that is our vision, the use of tabletop to achieve goals in a way that, pulls people in because of the fun of play, but it actually works very well with our title as an organization, because Bodhana is a Sanskrit word that means leading to an awakening or an understanding. So part of our theory behind this and what we do is we let the game do the work, but we make sure that the work is being done while the game is being played. And I'll definitely have more than enough examples as we go through to talk about, how games built these things covertly, but as professionals, we always like to make sure that, we're not just getting paid to play games with your kid. Like there's actual, like, legit, like, we believe to start always with some type of therapeutic approach or direction. Then we find if games can meet that need, then we focus on, just oversight and monitoring of how we're doing the work to help it reach its best fruition.
Okay. It definitely sounds like you are disciples of Fred Rogers in House.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You cheer for me, but he does the work behind making it fun for kids.
Well, it has to be. I mean, I always kind of joke, having ADHD and bipolar myself that I've worked through. I went through so many different therapies over the years when I was, troubled teen, whatever. And it was always, hey, let's sit around for an hour and talk about how much your life sucks. Like, let's talk about how rough things are, what bad things are going on. Right. And, we're kind of learning that traditional talk therapy doesn't work with everybody. So why not, and there's many levels to it. It's not only just playing the game to, like, you want to work on, cognitive skills, developing things like critical thinking or advanced planning or planning ahead. Yeah, there's tons of games that use critical thinking, like every game in the world does. But also, while we're playing the game, I'm going to borrow a little bit of Yiddish here. It's we kibitz, right? We talk. We just kind of shoot the breeze while we're playing. So let's take that and amp it even further if we're playing like a cooperative game, like a Marvel Legendary or Harry Potter Battle for Hogwarts, or, any title that's co-op. Now we have to engage with other people. Castle Panic. We have to talk about our moves with other players. So now the game, like I said, is covertly doing the work of engaging people socially, right, just to play the game. So just to play, you're already working on the skills that we want people to work on. But we don't have to call it out and go, today, we're going to work on reciprocal communication skills, kids, and conflict resolution. It's, hey, we're going to play a cool game. And sometimes this is to take that game. So sometimes someone's going to do a move that you don't like. That's okay, because we're just playing. It's just a game.
Right.
We're then
Oh, awesome.
how to handle anger and manage their emotions, or dealing with resilience. It's all about, it's under the hood, so to speak.
Gotcha. So many people told me that board games have helped them. For me, it helps me with social anxieties. You're getting people into the game. It's like, okay, I hate asking people. It's like, okay, but if you have a game, it's an easy way to get them in.
Ooh, that really, I think, kind of depends. At least in our experience, it depends on where the social anxiety is rooted. Because for some people, just the act of people like, well, come to a game store and play a game, and it's like, well, that might be an environment that person is not comfortable in, because
Exactly.
the number of people, where it's located, getting out of the house to go there, the level of noise that's in the place. Like, there's so many factors. But then when you talk about the type of game, for some people, they really excel at a certain type of game. For some, it may be like, if you're talking about traditional party games, which people are like, oh, it's so easy to play a game like this. And it's like, not necessarily. Like, party games like charades, there could be a performance-based form going along with the social anger. Well, what if I do something stupid, or what if I do something that people don't like, and then people are going to talk about me when I'm not there? Like, a lot of that self-judgment is also a huge part of social anxiety. Oh my God, I said this thing, and this person's like, they're probably driving home talking about me. Well, the
Right.
reality is they're probably not, but to the person experiencing social anxiety, that's a very real thing. So,
Right. I've
yeah.
run into people who got so freaked out because they lost the game. They were playing werewolf and they picked the wrong guy, and it was a big, and it was like a big reason why they didn't want to play again, because they lost the game and someone said something not horrible, but not very nice, and I could definitely see overthinking what they said, and they never came back.
Oh yeah, well, that whole experience of, because I mean, one of the things we talk about with kids specifically now, and teens, is kind of this rising. We actually just spoke at the National Alliance for Mental Illness conference in Pittsburgh. It was the regional, and a big theme of the entire conference was this whole idea of performance anxiety, not in a sports way, well, partially in a sports way, but that whole idea of, somewhere along the line, we've kind of given this message of, you're either perfect at it or you're completely horrible at it. So even then, that adds another layer of anxiety where, like, the first time I played Ark Nova, now let me just say, Ark Nova is a fantastic game.
It's
Is
the
that
top of the BGG.
right? But is that a game that I'm going to rip out every weekend? No, I'm horrible at it. Playing it, because for me, and the way my brain works, there's too much going on. I get lost in the shade, right? So I can feel what a person would feel like. Like, personally, I don't care whether I win or lose. I just love trying all of the games. But I can see, and this is just something for people to be careful about. If you bring out, like, oh, this is my favorite table charter topper, right? And a person's not a gamer,
Mm-hmm.
that game might blow them out of the water just by sheer complexity. And then they feel nervous about how they appear, and they don't, well, I'm here with all these other gamers and they all know what they're doing. And they're, am I going to get invited back? Am I not going to get invited back? But then people say about, well, just play a simple game, like a party game. Party game is another aspect of social anxiety, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
in something as simple as charades, you're getting up in front of people, you're performing, you're putting yourself out there. So one thing that I've learned is IP can be powerful for people. I mean, we were talking earlier about, like Star Wars and, Star Trek and, Marvel superheroes and things. There's so many games. Like, take a game like Codenames. On its base end, Codenames, it's an interesting game. It's a little boring, right? You have 25 words, you call out the words, there you go. But when you talk about Marvel code names or Disney code names, now you add the pictures. So you're also then giving someone multiple ways to Clue, but it's a little different. Like it sometimes even that IP could be like, oh, I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. Okay, let's play Time of the Daleks because you're into the property. I think that what that also does is, in terms of social anxiety, a lot of times people talk specifically about like not knowing what to talk about. Like, well, I get into this room and I don't, again, it's that I don't want to say something stupid. I don't want to say something that'll call me out. Well, now if we can build in the idea that this person, say they are a Doctor Who fan, right? All of those tiles, if they're a huge Who fan, they're going to know what those reference. So
Right.
it then builds that secondary layer of, now it's kind of like an olive branch to that person, because now
Right.
it's like, if I'm huge into race cars, play Formula Day, right? So now you can maybe talk about it. Or so to me, it's really a lot about whether the mechanics will interest a person, whether it is, maybe it's a game where you don't have to talk at all. So maybe it's like Magic Maze, right? Which is a great game, nonverbal. So you're not saying anything. You're just making the moves around the piece, but then you're still sharing that experience. The biggest thing is getting the person to the table. So
Exactly.
you don't want to intimidate them. You want to make it inviting and engaging. I would say don't lose on purpose to ingratiate the person at the table. play like you're gonna play. But yeah, I would say, to me, IP and the property of the game is probably one of the hugest things that brings a lot of kids in. That's why in our RPG groups that we run, we don't only run Dungeons and Dragons,
Right.
because we know some people don't like fantasy as much as others. So we run science fiction games, or we run horror games, or we run Old West role-playing games, things like that. So I think that's a great place to start.
Gotcha. I know for me, when I bring my friends in, it's like, if I know what they like, I'll bring them in. If they like Godzilla, King of Tokyo. If they like wrestling, Luchador. If they like horror movies, Horrified. If they like Marvel, Marvel Splendor.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God. Splendor. Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I've gotten quite a few people into the game, into playing board games using Splendor.
Well, and that's kind of another, like, when you talk about depth of mechanics, because we even joke, like, some people call them by different names, whether it's an ambassador game, or we jokingly call it a grandma game, right? Like, this is a game, grandma could play this game. And a lot of people will talk about, well, Catan is the perfect game to bring someone in. And I'm like, how about that? Catan is, it's a good game, but it's kind of like, just looking at it, if you're new to the hobby, that's an overwhelming game.
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
A friend of mine told me, like, I love Catan, but I can't play it because usually it's my wife. She plays me. It was only a 2-player game, so I end up playing on the iPad. So and it's fine. But I was telling my friend about it because I put out a series of episodes on the Boardgame Sherpa called the top 5 gateway games. I have volume 1 and volume 2.
Nice.
And Catan's on there. Ticket to Ride's on it. But when I was telling about Catan, he hated Catan because you want a game done right. That you want a Catan game done right. Get Takanoko, the one with Little Panda.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with building the bamboo and the different land capture and stuff. Yeah, it's a great game.
So I bought it last weekend, and my wife and I played it. It's like, I love this game. This is everything. This is everything I like about Catan, but I can play with 2 people.
Yep, and it's also it's very easy for kids to learn, which is another big thing that we're huge on, is the whole idea of family game nights with board games. And we're not again. I mean, I play video games, but I don't know. There's just something tactile about that board experience.
Right. I mean, I'm a computer programmer by nature. I'm also an author, so it's like I'm on the computer all the time. I want to get away from everything.
We got a little sidetracked.
Sure.
But yeah, that idea of that, that ambassador game, or that intro game, like Ticket to Ride, it's colorful, it pops, it's very easy to play, even though if you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, all these pieces, it's okay. There's really just cards and trains, folks. That's all that there is. And the cards, there's only 2 types of cards you have to worry about. That's it. It's really easy. But I think that's the other thing too, is a lot of people, like, we all have our go-tos, right? Our are holy grails of games that are like the
Right.
ones that we would play all the time. But I think a lot is, realizing that if someone is anxious about gaming, maybe, a lot of people, we talk about consent and safety in gaming around the RPG space. I think there's a lot to be said about not necessarily, well, safety and consent, definitely always, but the idea of letting people know what they're in for, if you will, because folks might say like, Cards Against Humanity or like all these titles that are like risque or whatever, but I'm like, is it really different from apples to apples, except it's like swear words and naughty things
Right.
or inappropriate stuff?
It's a shock value game.
Right. Like even take that games, just letting people know, hey, we're all going to be taking our lumps tonight. So if someone like destroys your turn, it's okay. We're all going to go through it. So it's also, I think, kind of knowing what people's expectations are, and don't be afraid to say, what might you be nervous about this? If you know that someone is anxious, because sometimes having that conversation. We talk about this with consent and safety tools. So a lot of people will say, well, we use an X card or we use lines and veils or, we use whatever at the RPG space. And I go, but have you ever had an unsafe moment? And people are, what do you mean? I go, have you ever had a time where someone has used the X card or lines and veils and tapped them? And they go, well, no. And I go, I don't know if you have the safe space you think you do. Not to say it isn't good that they're trying with the things. I'm not trying to sound better than anybody or anything, but the key fact is one of the biggest ways or reasons why safety tools work is it's not that people know, oh, I have the opportunity to speak up, because most of the time, if you're going out and you have social anxiety, you're not going to upset the apple cart. Most people are not, right?
Yeah, you're not telling people that they're stepping over the line. I know that for a fact from myself.
Yeah, you don't want to be the flat lever, right? You don't want to be the person that's bumming the group out. But when we tell people, once you have that moment where someone does say something, and a lot of times we will kind of jump the gun and we will demonstrate it by saying, yeah, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that game's theme, because you know what, Dead of Winter, it's cool and all, but I don't know, zombies kind of squick me out, right? Having a conversation about it shows people that you're going to give them the time and space, you're going to hear them, and that their opinion is going to be respected. So it sets up this area or this arena where people will feel more comfortable to open up, which also then reduces some of the anxiety of, oh, so they're not going to talk about the efforts with this because, we've already kind of broken the seal. You know what I mean?
Right. And one of the big things, I mean, I've had conversations with my friends like you can speak up and you'll still be invited back.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly it. Because a lot of times people won't speak up, and even checking in with people, we sometimes, everybody, it's usually the thing where like the person who brought the game or the person whose game it is that you're playing that night, usually when they get feedback, and I'm joking about that, is most of the time I've encountered is all they want to hear is how cool you thought the game they think is right? But having that true, like, so what did everybody think about it? Like, and at first it was just like, oh yeah, the boys, that was a great game. But we've gotten to the part now where I'm like, it was okay. And at first it was like, what do you mean Ark Nova's okay? And I'm like, dude, great game, very well designed, not my bag. I have a pledge. I never say any game sucks. There might be games that are confusing, their design could be improved, but I won't say, because it takes a lot of time to make a game. But that's even another thing for social anxiety is, what if I don't have a good time? Can I tell this person I didn't have a good time playing this game that maybe wasn't my jam? Like,
right.
I love deck builders. I cannot play Magic the Gathering. It's just a totally different, my brain doesn't work that way.
Agreed.
Oh man, you won't try it? I've tried it 12 times. If it hasn't worked by now, it's not going to work. So I think the other thing is maybe even letting that person choose a game that they're interested in, as opposed to when you're in this house, you're playing Frosthaven. Like that, like this is the kingdom of Frosthaven, which is a great game, by the way. How to invite someone to the table, but I think beyond that, there's a whole other thing of how to keep them at the table, how to involve them at the table, but then also how to want them to come back to the table. So
Right.
to me, it's a lot of layers, and it's a lot of like it's almost like micromanagement, but it's for the betterment of fun. So yeah,
Right.
there's a lot that goes into it, James.
I believe it. I have a friend, and he's kind of iffy on game night, and it's like, I'll bring Yahtzee, and that's what brings him. Okay, basic question. Which probably should have been asked a lot longer. What's your background? What's your background in board games and therapy?
All right. So I'll give you my CV first, my curricula vitae. So I've been in the human services field now for about 26 years. I got my master's in human services from Lincoln University in 2008. My experience in the field has been pretty varied. I've worked inner city education. I was a behavioral support aide for a number of years. I was a summer recreation playground leader, but then eventually I ran the music and drama program for 2 years. So that was like all of the playgrounds in the city. Then after that, brief stint in retail, because everybody in human services has to either work retail or food services.
Hmm.
Then I worked for about 10 years in a juvenile residential treatment facility. The focus on the floor that we were at was predominantly sexually problematic behaviors and victims of sexual abuse. But we also worked with various co-occurring mental health disorders, developmental and intellectual disability. Then I worked for 10 years in community-based settings with adults with intellectual disability and developmental disability. I did that also working specifically, mostly with folks, again, who had sexually problematic behaviors. I've been doing that. I still consult to this day with a number of companies. So that is most of kind of the professional end. I would have to say that my predominant ways that I approach therapy is typically through a cognitive behavioral lens. Specifically, I use a lot of Buddhist psychology approaches, which most folks will say, oh, DBT. Well, the techniques are the same, but I go back to the trough, as I say. Like, we talk about the Four Noble Truths and the nature of suffering and how we reduce attachment, and we use the Eightfold Path, avoiding the three poisons. I could go on forever. But that's mainly where a lot of my approaches come from. Now, as far as my GV, my gamer vitae, I've been playing board games since I don't know if it was Hi Ho Cherry-O or Uncle Wiggly, but those are one of the first games I remember. Then, of course, in the heyday, I played, all of the arcade board games. I had, the E.T. board game, Pac-Man, Frogger. I had all of these suckers back from the 80s.
Oh, wow.
I was born in 72. But I would have to say that I didn't seriously get into role playing. I found Dungeons and Dragons at 12, goofed around with it without knowing what I was doing. Then a friend, ironically, got me into the Ghostbusters role playing game because I've seen the movie well over 400 times. It's one of my top 10s.
Nice.
So I started playing the Ghostbusters role playing game, and then we took our characters and we started playing the Marvel TSR RPG, then Call of Cthulhu and Shadowrun, and it just catapulted from there. So I seriously got an RPG about 16, was kind of out of the hobby for a little bit, came back with a vengeance, and the first modern board game that I actually played was actually one called Cutthroat Caverns. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to play it. It's from Kurt Covert and Smirk and Dagger, Smirk and Laughter games.
Okay.
They most recently made Boop is one of their very, very big sellers lately. But they also did like Run for Your Life, Candyman, Shooting Ladders, Spill. Like there's a ton of titles. It's a great company that does a lot of take that mechanics.
Gotcha.
That was the one that like my wife and I really loved because You go into a dungeon together and you have to beat a certain number of monsters. The thing is, you play cards to do battle against these monsters and whittle down their hit points, but only the player that scores the killing blow gets the XP. So you're constantly trying to like screw over your party to like whittle them down, but not enough. I want to get the XP for this creature. So you're playing cards against each other. But the weirdness is you can't just outright kill everybody else off, because the dungeon is already slated that if you went in with 6 people, the monsters expect 6 people. So you have to like kind of let people go, but not let it. So there's a lot of backstabbing and stuff that goes on. There's actually a huge psychology of take that games that create these awesome moments. You know, we kind of call that the with those things. You know, we've all had that happen at the table where it's like, oh my god, that combo is amazing. But that was about when I kind of got serious into that, and then it was Marvel Legendary and Cerberus Engine from Cryptozoic with all the DC deck builders, and then it just kind of went. Right now, I have a personal library of about 500 titles.
Nice.
Bodhana has an active library of about 2,700 that we take to school events, we take to old folks' homes, we go to conventions and run board games for other conventions, as well as running our own convention, Save Against Fear, in November.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
Well, actually, it leads up to my next question.
Aha.
Who is your typical board game therapy client, and how do they end up walking through your doors? Do schools refer them? Do you get them through cons, or?
Healthy mix of all of above. I mean, I will say that in terms of board games, we do make a distinction that a lot of times our board games are not like clinically therapeutic. We use board games. Here's the kind of breakdown. So a lot of what we do with role playing is like, if we have a kid who has anxiety or a kid who has depression, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll use the narrative in a role playing game to kind of help that person by maybe rehearsing situations that they go through, or we teach them coping skills that maybe will create tension in the game so they can use those coping skills. Board games, there are emotional board games out there. I mean, I mentioned Dead of Winter earlier, which has the crossroads system, so weird moral choices. But we mostly see board games being more of a capacity building activity. Now, that can be therapeutic, but we have to be a little bit careful about how we do that, because mostly, like with board games, we sometimes use those in one-to-one sessions. I'll play a lot of 2-player games with kids to get them more comfortable to talk. So we sometimes the game is used as a backdrop. Now, we have another program that we run where there's a young man who is autistic, and we're trying to teach social engagement skills, like learning to share the mic, as it were, and asking others about themselves. These are some of the goals from the parents and from the person. So what we do is we've been playing cooperative board games. We're playing a great title called Zombie Kids, which is a really cool game for kiddos. But the game is like, so we build, okay, when we're getting ready to take our turn, even though you might not normally do this in a co-op, but let's talk about it as a team. So this way, we're again using the nature of the game for him to practice. Well, what do you think? Trying to also engage in small talk. So I would say that all games are therapeutic in that they are helpful with managing stress. They provide opportunities for us to connect with other people. But when we talk about board games for capacity building, we might say, well, this kid's working on self-expression. Okay, so maybe we'll try something like monikers, or, which has some, like, it's a little bit of charades, it's a little bit of taboo, it's a little bit of like $64,000 pyramid, all kind of lumped into one performative game. We might also try From Zero to T-Rex, right? Which is another cool charade style game, but in that one, like, the card might be act like a T-Rex. You have a 3 and I have a 6. So I have to act like a T-Rex on a 3 from a scale of 1 to 10, but I have to guess what number you're acting on maybe the floor is lava. So people are like, well, that sounds kind of cool, and it's a great party game. But now we're talking about, can I recognize intensity and variance of behavior on a scale, which is teaching people nuance and how
Okay.
to read other people in their behavior. So a lot of what we do with board games is task analysis. So we figure, what do we want the person to work on? What skills are we developing? Is a game appropriate? And then what game is the best game? Or as we say, finding the right game for the right reasons. Because
Gotcha.
take a stop on BGG. How many thousands of games are on that website? So it's about finding the right gaming experience to help develop a lot of those skills. Sometimes you can use stress management or anxiety. Dread, it's a very good game that, creates a lot of stress and anxiety. So it's how do you maintain that or recognize unhealthy stress versus healthy stress? So, it's a lot about using these games, like I said, in a very covert way. So this is also why I love playing as many games as possible. So I get to see what separates like my first Castle Panic from regular Castle Panic, or
Gotcha.
Magic Maze for Kids from my first Castle Panic, or my first Scythe or whatever. So
It's funny. I knew this much. I thought I knew everything at this level. And it's like what you just said is like up here. It's like it's amazing what I didn't know, the amount of stuff I didn't know about how board games can be useful.
It's just really about like one person that because we do training and consultation in these. We actually have been doing a series of board game trainings specifically with Mansfield University, which is out towards Wellsboro, PA. And what we've been doing basically is we have social workers, educators, community partners, and they come to our training. It's a 2-day training, and we have like a sample library of 8 games that we focus on in the training. And it's one, like Ticket to Ride, Code Names, like Point Salad, Astro Trash. I mean, very easy to learn games, but we teach people about the skill benefits of all of these. And we teach people how to learn games, because there's a science there, how to teach games, which is an even bigger science, then how to like augment them and change them. And then we give them examples of ways to integrate these into their classroom or into their session. And we just finished our 3rd training there, and we're being asked back again because more educators and even now parents, we're talking about running parent groups where we teach about this, because it's very intricate. Like on its surfaces, like we say, yeah, we use board games for capacity building. Oh, like Monopoly for money? No, that's a horrible idea. First of all, we only have like an hour to play in most cases. So no, maybe I'll use Point Salad to work on math. Why? Well, it's calculations, it's probabilities, it's also risk reward and resilience. When you don't get that, you get that veggie card and you're like, I really wanted that, point card. So we think that by using games that are very popular in their own right and they're great to play, we found a lot of games that are great games, but we would never use them in our program because either they're too complex, they take too long to play, or there's sleeker, quicker games that do it better. So a lot of what we do is we play test a lot. We get demos from companies. We get donated copies of games. So if anybody is sitting on that, like I call it the pandemic smog stack, because you're sitting on this board and you're like, well, we had nothing to do while we were quarantined but play board games. Now people are like, all right, someday that teetering mound of board games is going to crush the animals in my house when it falls over. We accept donation. We're 501c3, so yeah, any
That's
game.
a great option. My game listening back is getting out of control, and there's a few I don't want to sell on eBay because it's just a hassle to sell on eBay. It's like, give them to somebody who can actually do good with them.
Yeah, and even like, because some folks will say, well, what if I like donate a copy of Scythe to you? Well, we're not going to. I'll be honest, we're not going to use Scythe in our programs because it's too complicated. However, we could sell it. we could auction it off at our event. So it also raises money for the organization. So, people are like, it's too much donation. Not at all. We're actually, yeah.
That's really great to know.
Yeah.
That's great to know.
We can donate it to a local board game club or a local library to help them start their own game club library. There's tons of options, and we love trying to get these into the hands of people who need them. And like I said, teaching them how to use them, because there's a lot of thought that goes into it to make sure, like I said, that we're working on goals, that we're not just playing for the sake of play. It's play with a purpose.
Gotcha. It's definitely cool, because I'm definitely put this stuff in the description below, just so people can find you and get direct answers if I haven't answered their question. Hey there, this is the Board Game Sherpa breaking down the first half of the interview with Jack Berkenstock of the Bodhana Group. I'm splitting it into two halves to make it more digestible for YouTube. So click subscribe to be notified when the video is coming out. It'll probably be tomorrow or the next day. But I'll see you then. Take care.